I'm excited to welcome an incredible group of interesting and funny people to the stage. Come on up. Jonah, Brian, Salvador. It's our pleasure today to explore this idea on how humor has such a huge impact in the world of branded entertainment. And these folks, as I mentioned, are quite funny, but in fact, they also know from funny, and they know, more importantly, what it takes to connect humor and to an audience, and what that means for brands. So I'm going to let them do a quick introduction. We'll start with Salvador.
Okay, thank you. My name is Salvador Mata. I'm head of research for Comedy Central at Viacom International Media Networks for Americas. And we've done a pretty nice studies that we'd like to talk to you about.
Quick disclosure that Comedy Central is a client of ours.
It is.
I'm Brian. I'm trying to not be noisy in my chair. My background is a very, very common one, from Field & Stream to Parenting Magazine to The Onion to Adult Swim to starting my own business. I spent several years in New York working for The Onion, spun off with a group of people and worked on a small digital property for Adult Swim, and then have subsequently started a company with my co-founder Baratunde Thurston, who's more familiar at these sorts of things than I am, and another former Onion colleague, where we do some agency work and have a comedic hackathon where we pair developers and comedians together to hack.
Hi, I'm Jonah Minton. I'm the Senior Vice President at Fullscreen. Fullscreen is a media company focused on the most influential content creators in social media.
Great, thank you guys. Well, to ground us today, we really wanted to set the stage with why humor. And Comedy Central conducted a piece of global research across 12 countries and 3,600 respondents that measured 12 million reactions. You'll learn a little more about what that means. But let's roll that video to understand a little bit more about the power of laughter.
This is Comedy Central's Power of Laughter study, a completely innovative perspective on audience mood and behaviour. Comedy Central has discovered groundbreaking technology that takes us deep into the viewer's emotional state. We travelled to 12 countries, connecting with over 3,500 participants to test these revolutionary techniques. We discovered that young adults are very happy, and laughter is a key ingredient in their lives. We all need laughter. It connects, it cures, it's contagious. This study illustrates how laughter leads directly to a more positive outlook, helps you make friends, makes you healthier, more self-confident, and even gives you a better sex life. For the first time, we are also able to measure the direct effect laughter has on audience engagement with our content and the commercials in it. Comedy Central used EmoScan, a facial scanning tool that decodes our subject's emotional response to visual stimulus by tracking intricate facial movements. If that sounds like hard science, that's because it is. For the first time, we can measure in subtle detail how viewers respond to content, showing exactly which emotions are conveyed and when. No need to rely on inarticulate recall. We now have immediate objective feedback measured with precision to within 1/10 of a second. How did we do this? Easy. We presented our audience with comedy content running into commercial breaks and compared this to factual programming, allowing us to accurately gauge how engagement differs. In total, we gathered over 12 million individual emotional measurements. The results were revolutionary. We now understand exactly how comedy boosts high levels of emotional engagement, not only with the content, but also into the commercials. Connection with the audience is our core objective. Research guides us to continually develop better content for our viewers, so we can generate stronger bonds to a brand already loved by so many, in turn handing commercial partners a competitive advantage. Comedy Central, fueled by power of laughter.
Well, I need to stop watching Scandal and Homeland and start watching a little more Adult Swim, it looks like. But Salvador, can you tell us a little bit about this connection between the higher degree of emotional engagement in comedy versus serious content, and why brands need to care about this?
Actually, the reason behind doing this study was to prove how the context of a comedy content program could relate to another could relate to the brands when they're on air. So basically what we did was compare two groups of people watching comedy segment, as you saw, that it was Friends, versus another type of content more serious or more neutral, like a documentary. And using this technology of ImmoScan, what we did is track all the reactions in the faces of the people. So either they smile or they wink, or if they have a small reaction, it was registered. And we compare how people react through the content, but not only through the content, which we expect to have more emotional response through a comedy than a documentary, but actually what happened right after the segment ends and enters a reel of spots. So basically what we see was a uplift of the reaction of people that stay longer through the different ads than the people watching comedy than watching the other content that was more serious. So basically this proves how there's an uplift when the content or the context around these posts were comedic, and it was funnier, people stay longer, and they were willing to react more than just the regular reaction towards another drama or in this case, a documentary.
Which facial expression proved they have a better sex life? How do you, what's your favorite?
Well, actually, that was part of the first part of the study where we asked people how they feel about laughing and being active, how they feel in their lives. And it was funny because we asked people, hey, do you laugh several times through the day, or just once a day, or less than that? And we expected people just to at least lie and say that they laugh every day. But 45% people say that they won't.
And if they're laughing because of the sexual experience, though, that's probably not
I think it varies. My suggestion is not necessarily laugh during the act, because it kind of gets you different reactions. So I would say just laugh more in general. Yes. So definitely that was the idea of the study, to prove how this context translates and as we call it, gives a halo effect through the whole list of spots after the content. Yes.
Now, taking this to the online realm, one of the key tenets that Facebook has told us for years and years is, look at everything through the lens of why should people care and why should they share. So obviously in humor, in the humor world, Brian, you have lived on the side of traditional comedy as well as humor online. Can you talk to us a little bit about, are there some basics of comedy that have to be included in order for people to really care and to really share, which is the goal, for many brands, is that virality? Yeah,
it's a good question, and it's a tough one because there's, inevitably with a lot of this stuff, there's never sort of a magic formula. But generally, what you find is that just creating the principles for creating good comedy tend to align with creating something that is going to be well liked and shared. And so I actually, whenever I think about this, it's funny. I think back to The Onion and like the formula that they used to create content we used, which predates the internet by far and goes back into the late 80s when they started the process. But everything comes down to headlines. And you pitch a headline, you pitch a list of headlines. On any given week, between all the writers and contributors, you might get 1,500, 2,000 total headlines. And you reduce it down, you distill it down, and you kill things. And you may personally really, really think that something's great, but the room doesn't. And you wind up with maybe 30, 40 headlines that come out of these 2,000. And then you just start the whole cycle over the next week. And I think it's funny or interesting now you're seeing Upworthy and BuzzFeed, and there's so much emphasis placed on headlines and headline construction. And I think that you're starting to see that the content that's being created, especially for digital and that's being optimized for sharing, is falling back on these sort of principles of like, you can't just whip it up. You need to probably produce a lot, have a strong room of creative people who can help you sort of like whittle it down and find something that's really evocative or something that people are going to really relate to, understand, like, enjoy, share, etc.
And that was before the word link bait even really existed.
Yeah. We were doing, The Onion was doing clickbait before clickbait was a thing that,
So, Jonah, for the connected generation, how has distribution changed? I mean, how has consumption and sharing changed just from a, from a technical perspective, and how are they experiencing that day to day differently?
Sure. So, and just for some background on Fullscreen, we're founded by George Stroumboulous, who is an executive from Google, and he was one of the first executives to go over when they bought YouTube and try to figure out what do we do with this property that we bought. And he created the idea for the YouTube Partner Program that allows YouTubers to rev share, making it possible for them to make money and do their content creation every day full time. Fast forward to 2014, we now have probably probably have about tens of thousands of content creators globally that have teams of people working for them making content on YouTube and social media. So George was really a part of that, that evolution at YouTube, founded Fullscreen, because he was so interested in the data around what should be curated. YouTube, if you can you think about them as the pipes, right? They facilitate content creation and sharing, and Fullscreen curates that pipe down to 50,000 channels out of millions on Google and YouTube. And for us, we're seeing data that mobile is the new water cooler. 50% of all video traffic on YouTube is happening on mobile devices, which is perfect because you can share it, you can engage, you can content, you can comment, you can like.
You can make more of it.
And you can make more of it. We're seeing a stat right now that says in 2006, 7% of the world was creating content. In 2014, 76% of the world are content creators because they are posting on Facebook. They are creating content, and everyone wants to be a part of the conversation. And so, we're really excited about enabling that and curating all those amazing content creators and headlines.
It's no longer the game just to share. It's the game
participate.
To create.
Yeah,
participate.
Exactly.
And be recognized among your peers to, hey, this is the guy that created this.
Exactly.
It's super exciting. I mean, and we at The Onion, you would encounter these opportunities to spin up a YouTube project, to sort of build a new little fake universe. And it was always so fun, and it's a lot of what my company's doing now with these hackathons and such, is that these are types of comedies, or ways to sort of execute a joke that never really existed before. The fact that we have these incredibly powerful machines inside of our pockets, and with the way that we interface with Yelp, or buying something on Amazon, or commenting on something on Facebook, these are all new opportunities to sort of practice humor. And I think it's exciting to think of it not just about like, oh, we're in this day and age where you can very easily create a comedic video and post it, but you can do a comedic all sorts of things. Just the nature of Twitter and the way that comedy has sort of spun up and evolved a whole new genre of comedy and what's on Twitter. It's very, very cool, and it's exciting to see these people, especially on YouTube, rise up and actually start to get discovered, because that 20 years ago, that was just your funny buddy Rick, and now he's like the celebrity Rick, funny buddy Rick, with the subscribers of 2.6 million subscribers.
And they're traveling to mass media too, because we see now. Some years ago, we said like, okay, this is a different era. In our case, like, okay, traditional media with the digital, and you'll see how they cross-reference.
Absolutely.
They go to TV or any other traditional media and goes back. It's not staying just in that universe.
But how do brands really make sense of that? I mean, you have some really incredibly talented people on shows, not 50,000 shows on Comedy Central, a handful of shows that are programmed every day, or tens of 20 shows, versus 50,000 channels that you are selecting, Jonah, that have these up-and-comers, right? So as a brand, how do you decide kind of what kind of content you want to be associated with, and how do you also get involved and make that really help tell and drive your brand story?
Sure. So, one of the things that we really care deeply about is helping content creators become brands. We want to help them evolve and become a global media company amongst themselves. But conversely, we want to help our brands become creators. And so, for the example, we work with General Electric to help program and develop content for their YouTube channel. And our goal is to make them a content creator, where someone who loves technology and science is going to subscribe to the General Electric YouTube channel, and they're going to want to go visit back each week as we help General Electric program that community and be a part of that conversation. So like the ultimate goal for them is they want to become the Red Bull of tech and science enthusiasts. So we're helping them amongst that journey become a content creator, which is really exciting. And the way to do that is really to experiment. Try things, be playful, look at the data, see what's working. If you look at most of the popular content creators in social media, they didn't start with one video that was a hit. They typically will have 500 or 1,000 pieces of content, and there was an evolution.
They did a lot of crappy stuff.
Yeah, there was an evolution of their voice. There was an evolution of building their audience and engaging with their fans and listening to their fans along the way as they create content, which I think is really interesting when you think about social media content creation versus traditional means of content creation, because you can listen and adapt quickly.
Totally. Yeah.
And for a brand as well, right? It can't just be like right out of the gate. Like, how many people in this room have had someone say to them, I would like you to make me a viral video? Like a lot of people, like every day. So, it's a process, and it takes a commitment to the ecosystem. What should brands really focus on as they're going to go down this journey? And is it right for every brand?
Those are two big questions. I think for one, kind of piggybacking on what Jonah was just saying, like comedy at its best is like the art of masterful empathy. You need to understand deeply what your audience is going through or what the situation that they're in. It's why, anecdotes about being on a bus, like most people have an experience of being on a bus where something weird or shady kind of happened, and so you can start suddenly developing that sort of empathy and understanding. And I think you can't necessarily just like whip up funny to really create something viral or that has a higher likelihood of sharing. Ideally, you're tapping into something that's very real, and whether you're a brand or whether you are just a pure stand-up comic struggling in Manhattan somewhere, the whole goal is finding that rich sort of vein of something that people can really relate to and finding a way to make some sort of commentary on it or to tap into it in a unique, original way, get people to think about it in a fashion that they may not have ever thought about it before.
And understand if it could travel just for a single type of audience or goes even global, right? Because sometimes you have
those things
the right audience depending on
the right thing.
On the media and the other. I mean, on our side, we usually depends on the type of content we decide. Either it goes too specific for a niche audience, local, or it's a global content that will go everywhere. And
it's not an either or, you mentioned, Salvador. No. So talk a little bit about the need to have both global and local perspectives here.
In the international group, we know, and it's been years from now when the discussion was around it's either local content or international US maybe content. And it's no longer that. It's how can we have both? How can we balance the type of content we have? And we have niche of audiences for each type of content. In the case of our audiences in Latin America, we have a mix of both the local, which is strong, but also the content from outside.
In this world of online branded humor, though, it does take courage on behalf of a brand, and they have to be willing to let go a little bit. And this panel spent some time in preparation here, really trying to understand what would be required to do that. What is, by nature, a brand have to do, as well as, that fine line between letting the content creator and the humorist do their thing, while also having a need for the brand voice and the brand message to come through.
I mean, that's the tricky, that is the crux of it right there, right? It's very difficult, especially if your brand is not sort of playful or fun by nature. If you are, soap, or if you are, soda or something like that. You may not necessarily, soda's maybe a bad example because it's fun and it gets you all wired up as a kid. So, but if you have, if your brand is somewhat not, humorless or what have you, it's difficult because do you try and inject it in? Do you try and associate with it? And there's no one answer to that. I mean, that's sorry. But I think that the most important thing is that you do your homework and you come in with a plan. And to some degree, you're entering with a bit of a playbook and you're understanding and we at The Onion and through most of anything I work on talk a lot about voice and about character. And if you can develop the sort of character or the central like premise, that central focal point, and then start to really develop, like, who is this character on Twitter? Who is this character on Facebook? Who is this character on YouTube? Who would this character follow on Twitter? Who would this how would the character react to this or that? When would they react? When would they not? You can start to sort of develop at The Onion, we had this fake publisher, T. Herman Zwiebel, who come from a long line of tuber farmers, but he was this stodgy old traditionalist newspaper guy, and that so many of the ways the Onion, the brand, reacted to things came through the lens of like, well, what would Zwiebel do? And so I think that's one starting point for any of these things. If you're going to try and go down that road, is to like, before you start creating any content, really sort of say, who's talking here? Who's the character? What's our point of view for this campaign or our brand as a whole?
We have a fun example of a current comedy project with a brand partner. So we were approached recently by General Electric and our friends at Jimmy Kimmel Live. They're working on, they had a upfront relationship with Disney and ABC, and they said, we want to do something fun. We want to do a stunt. We want to create content. We'll, of course, integrate into the show, but what else can we do? So Fullscreen came to the table because we have a relationship with Jimmy Kimmel's YouTube channel where we do strategy for their channel. And we said, one of our favorite comedians in our network is Jack Vale. Jack is an online prankster, comedian. He's most known for his show Social Media Experiment, where he'll go up to people on the street and he'll look through social feeds to see who's posting local hashtags in a Starbucks, and then he'll approach them with information that would be private, but they posted it publicly. And then shock
that's
them.
amazing.
And so,
like what, Jonah? He goes up and asks what exactly?
he will say, so if we're at a Starbucks and Stephanie, you just took a selfie on Instagram with a picture of you and your latte with Stephanie written on it, he can now identify you. He knows you're there in that Starbucks, and then he can look at your feed and see what else is happening in your life and align it with his life. And so you guys might have the same birthday, and he'll say, oh my God, is your birthday August 24th? And you'll be like, how did you know that? And then he'll pretend like he's a psychic and reveal other things about your life, and you're completely floored.
Scary.
And then he'll sort of say, actually, you posted all this on social media, and I've got my family over there doing all this research, and we're doing this reality show on YouTube. And so General Motors thought it was really fun because they're promoting a new car, the Equinox, that features 4G LTE Wi-Fi service. And so the car was really a character in the show, enabling the war room from Jack's family to do all their research. And so they were integrated into the show in kind of a natural way because they needed Wi-Fi, and they had this super fast 4G LTE Wi-Fi powered Equinox to do all their research in. And so I think, Stephanie, to your point, like, they wanted to have fun. They wanted to be playful. They were ready for that. They liked Jack's character. They liked that he was positive and playful, and it wasn't such a serious. It was comedy. It was meant to be fun, and the integration.
And
with
it's
TV,
integrated. It's not like, okay, at the end, sponsored by.
Exactly.
No, it's part of the story, and that's what you want to tell, like a story.
Exactly. They had a purpose.
Right,
for being there.
and people understand the brands have a personality.
Right.
Yeah.
You of course need to know what's that personality, and from there build up towards where you want to be. Either if you're not near anywhere being funny or comedic, but you still want to go somewhere in the middle, so you can build from there. Maybe you don't want to do the whole leap to the other side, but still you need to be sure what's the personality of your brand. And I think people, and we've seen it in our studies, that people see these brands, their personality, and who are the funny brands, who are the ones that bring up this content that is the content that people share at the end. Like, there's one of the contents that people also share are ads,
right?
Yeah. Those funny ads.
Super Bowl ads.
In the list of things people share are ads. Like,
Sure.
We've seen like at least a third of the people share an ad.
Yeah.
Which is, if you get to that point, to make it viral.
Yeah.
It's great.
Oh, one of my, this biggest pet peeves with this is that people tend to think this is free to do, but obviously in your example, there's a relationship with Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more, too, from a business model perspective, how each of you work with brands and agencies and content creators. What's the business model changes that are happening around this? And how did that idea come to fruition? Is it a fully integrated approach?
Sure, I'll start. So at Fullscreen, we work with brands in a few ways. We'll either work with them in sort of an agency fashion, where we'll develop YouTube strategy and content for them, and then we'll sit at the table amongst their other traditional agencies, media, PR, creative, from the YouTube perspective. Or we'll work on a campaign, right, which might come from a PR agency, a creative agency, or a media agency, and we'll develop a content marketing program for them against a specific objective. So we're either helping them with YouTube strategy and content creation, or we're working on a campaign in a campaign launch.
This is like another one of these kind of just messy territories, or if you will. And like every time I think that I've like learned something, the next opportunity or next project comes along and completely undermines everything that I just thought that I learned. So I mean, I think my biggest thought on this is all like we're all on the same boat here, and I think it's okay to embrace some of the like confusion around how do you make something that's really good, and how do you build a business from all sides of the equation. How do you as a brand, how do you pay for this? How much do you pay for certain things? As an agency or as a creative, how do you begin to work? And if you are at a big place like Funny or Die or The Onion or Jimmy Kimmel, how do you engage with brands versus, you know, folks like me or like smaller agencies who maybe want to specialize in humor? Every opportunity, every time is a little bit different. Sometimes it may start with a brand who says we want something along the lines of X, and sometimes it may be Jimmy Kimmel saying we want to do a new feature. The most glorious and rare unions are when those two things dovetail beautifully together, when it's like, great, we wanted a piece of content and we've been looking for an excuse to do this new thing. They overlap, and it's not a square peg into a round hole sort of thing. So I mean, that's the ideal, but I think the one good rule of thumb with all of this stuff and like where's the business in there, an important thing is not to let the business mechanics of it all push it into a space where it's no longer producing good work, or it's no longer, because like comedy is a very fickle mistress, and the more you sort of push it into something where it feels forced or contrived, all the magic juju of what makes comedy so great and special gets sucked out of it. And or it can, it does not necessarily always the case. So I always feel like the most important thing is once this kind of conversation begins, you want to find a strong piece of content, a strong idea. You know what, you just gave a sort of 20-second rundown of what the premise of this guy, you know, this guy's show is, and you're like, that's funny, you know, and then start from there. And now don't lose the thing. Like, we've got our flag in the ground. Don't stray too far, because that's funny. That's going to do well. Let's figure out a way to make everything else work. Integrate what we need. But if you start moving that target a little bit, that's where things open up to get tougher.
One thing, sorry to interrupt on the flow here, that I think is really interesting is content creation from a consumer's perspective doesn't happen during a scheduled time. Yeah. Right? And so it's like, oh, well, it's not prime time at Thursday at 8 p.m., right? You're not waiting for your viral video moment then. You're consuming whenever you want, however you want during the year. And, you know, so obviously advertisers and brands are spending in very traditional schedules, right? You've got the upfront process and TV, and there's certain primetime inventory that is highly coveted. But from an earned media perspective and from a PR perspective, how do you connect back to the user path to where the consumers are thinking about your brand pretty much all year round, not during, you know, primetime television, and then when that season's over, they'll forget about your brand. And so from a PR perspective, like, how can this industry own that conversation in digital, in social video all year round? And that comes from a different budgeting point of view, because it's like, oh, well, our campaign, our dollars, our budgets are tapped with this campaign that we're launching, and the consumers don't care about that. They want to, if you love the campaign, what's next? What's my next thing I want to watch?
And there are plenty of examples of brands that have created an infrastructure for real-time response and content creation. And we've seen some great successes, although we'd always love for this panel to tell us some examples. There's people in this room who constantly want to know about what's the best new work that's out there. So I'd love your thoughts on who's doing it right from a real-time perspective. And also, there's some downsides to that, too. And we've all seen examples when a brand has tried to hop on to a trend that backfires.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. That doesn't happen.
We won't mention it. No. Feel free to mention some.
Who's doing a good job of this? I mean, the thing that's freshest in my head, and there've been a couple, General Motors, General Electric, a couple things have come up. GE just did their video with Jeff Goldblum recently, and I think it's a fantastic thing of what you were just talking about. For one, they got real legit comedy talent, and Tim and Eric, the production team, who have like totally earned their stripes in the comedy biz. And I mean, it seemed as though they handed them money and a decent amount of freedom, and something glorious came out of it. And it wasn't a Super Bowl commercial. It wasn't something that aligned with a certain. It was a purely digital product. It was a two-minute video that just promoted itself more or less once it got out there, because it had Jeff Goldblum at the center of it. It was totally batshit crazy weird, which was very strange for GE, for a light bulb ad, but it was really effective. And I think I mean, that's not so much an example of the real-time sort of like Twitter genre, but definitely an example of someone I think who embraced what you were just talking about, of saying, listen, we're not going to sort of force this into like some regimented campaign schedule or certain. They said, we're going to make a really crazy video for the internet, and it's going to sell some light bulbs, and it worked. That's how it took.
You said you need to try a few new things from now and then.
Yeah.
No? Like,
yeah,
okay,
I mean,
let's go a little bit
yeah.
further the boundaries.
But I think that.
And they went out there on the fringe a little. I mean, you mentioned the name really quickly, but can you just...
Tim and Eric, yeah, I forget their production company, the name of it, but they've had a show for years, and they've worked on a bunch of different crap. I believe that they also were the ones that really launched the new sort of reimagination of Old Spice and all that crazy shit of things coming out of people's heads and body parts falling off and whatever. But yeah, I mean, those guys are great, and they as like content creators are doing a really effective. I mean, they're spinning off TV shows and movies, and they're a full-scale production house. But they are someone who's definitely found out how to play ball with brands and make it work. And I mean, some of that is they probably have the authority and the leverage to say, you need to trust us. But I don't know the inner workings of what those conversations are like. But I applaud brands whenever they sort of say, listen, okay, we're gonna set a few restrictions, and restrictions are good for comedy creation, actually. But then let you go and sort of trust that you're gonna tap into something that we may not see or understand. And it's worked so well so far for them.
Mm-hmm. And talent-wise, a big-name Hollywood talent is one example of doing this in a kind of higher production value way, higher cost. But there is a long tail of talent that, Jonah, you deal with on a regular basis, and Salvador, you talked about in the launch of some of Comedy Central channels in other countries, how they're tapping up-and-coming YouTube stars.
Right, yes.
So I want to explore a little bit about the new type of
and I think
talent.
what I was mentioning about getting this interaction between media, forget about this whole dispute between if it's online or linear. I mean, they're all living together. And in the case of Comedy Central in Spain, we did a great example of using YouTubers to tweet and to post and actually go on air and talk about the new launch of the season of South Park, which was bringing this talent, which it's out of the mainstream, but people know about them. Yeah. Bringing them and interact with them. So give them another forum, another platform, and then get it back to the site too. So I think that's the type of examples we've done, and also locally when we use stand-up comedians to bring them to our social platforms and make them comment or maybe do a second screening of a particular show, talk about it and get people engaged in the conversation around that particular show.
And these aren't household names, but they have hundreds of thousands of YouTube subscribers. We're actually going to show a video that we did with one of those influencers, Dame Drop, who is a guy in Connecticut who sits in his car and gives fast food reviews. And has anyone here heard of Dame Drop? You guys subscribe on his YouTube channel? A few people, not a lot.
YouTube is amazing. I just love that this is a thing that exists now. There's the guy, the guy who sits in his car and reviews fast food, and people are like, yeah, I've heard of him. That's amazing.
This group probably isn't the demographic for Dame, but Dame did he did a longer video, 8-minute video. We did a little synopsis of it that we're going to run on behalf of our client Frank's Red Hot. So let's just show that really quick.
YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, it's your main man Dame drops back down with another super official. For if you can't dig it, baby, I know you can't. Hey, listen, man. So the good people of Frank's Red Hot Sauces, they reached out to your boy, and they said, Dame, we want to present you with some banging flavors that could take your basic up a notch. What's up? All right, just to let you know, this bite is going to be a hellacious haymaker. Get on there, get on there. Oh, 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 oh. This one is another power hitter. Just to let you know, sauce game crazy. If you really want to impress me, I want you to make my kryptonite taste good. My kryptonite. Crunchy water. Yeah, I said it. I'm going back to my sweet chili sauce. None too crazy. I'm going to just try not to make a mess. Try to get it in there, Yeah, a couple drops. Little fireball of flavor. Bottoms up.
Glad, I'm glad you laughed.
Give it up for the guy in his car.
And again, not someone you see every day, but 360,000 subscribers on YouTube. I mean, in my mind, this is the long tail of content creation. And for a brand, which, by the way, you know, that's a small little example, get to know you experience with a content creator, not a big, huge upfront investment. Sent a few samples to Dame. But these are the kinds of things that brands can be experimenting with and then grow those into larger relationships. And Jonah, you know, tell us a little bit about how you've seen that evolve over the last 24 months.
Sure. I mean, the cool thing about that video and that we've seen from the YouTube generation is that it's just, it brings relatability and authenticity. Yeah. You don't get the sense that was $1 million shoot. And that
it wasn't.
You know, it feels like, you know, anybody could have shot that, but you really you like his personality. You feel like you can relate to it.
Do you feel like you're there?
You feel like you're there in the car, really, And I think that's why this generation, we call it the connected generation, because it's really a span, it's really a lifestyle of folks that are watching content on their mobile devices, and that's why they love it. And so we have a partnership we just launched with AT&T, where we're going to be doing a real-time content studio with them, identifying content creators that are creating interesting content and helping AT&T get inside the conversation that's happening now in social video. So, you know, right now, and working closely with their agencies for brand voice and brand guidelines, because we want to make sure that they're comfortable with this experiment. But for them, they're planning on 6 months to years out in terms of their content creation and advertising, and they want to partner to figure out how can we get closer to things that are happening right now that are cool, and not wait 6 months to figure out the creative and lock down the brand voice and then go into production. And so we are partnering up with about 15 to 20 influencers that are going to be submitting cool content to us on a weekly basis. We'll curate that, see what's relevant to AT&T, submit it, and then they'll see stuff that's happening that's really topical and be able to react to that and live it and have that live on their channel. So this is, for us, something that we're really excited about, is helping brands get into the real social video, the real world and real time of social video.
By the way, Dame is happy to work with brands, so I said I would plug that.
I think there's this cool like little middle zone that's developing, I think, through like the work that you probably get a front row seat for this every day. But you know, I mentioned before that you as a brand will kind of want to figure out your character and figure out your point of view, and then typically, so then it's okay, what's next? One direction to go is you look at Funny or Die, The Onion, The Tonight Show, what have you, these big institutions, and say, can we make something work that's in line with this character, this voice, this perspective that we want to, and now, but the trouble there is, Funny or Die couldn't necessarily do that video because everyone would be like, this isn't the type of content I expect, so they need to, there's a much more sort of dog and pony show around the creation there. The flip side of it is, do you just make something totally yourself? Well, that's a lot of pressure, you have to find talent, you have to go through, but there's this like nice little middle tier of people that you can look to say, all right, who out there that is creating content, getting people to laugh, building an audience, and they align with that character that we like. In some way or another, they sort of fall into that good spot. And can we talk with them and work together with them? Because for them, I mean, that dude's, for one thing, he's probably just thrilled to death. He's got all this goddamn hot sauce in his life now. And like, that's a really great thing for him. And it offers just kind of a new potential that, again, absolutely didn't exist even 5-10 years ago.
And I think it's part of the homework you have to do. Like,
Yeah.
let's figure out, okay, this is the message that I want to send.
Yeah.
Then which are the contenders? Which are the best ways to promote it? How I want to associate with, and I think there's a range of people you can find out that could do the work. But I think it's, again, either you need to start, where are you now as a brand? Where are you gonna head to? And where's that middle ground where you can cover this transition? Maybe if you want to go towards a more humor comedy, or whenever you want to do those touch points of humor in your life as a brand.
Yeah.
No?
And I think, how do you measure success? I mean, that's like the big question going into a project. It's like, well, is it 500,000 views? Is it 1 million? Is it 10 million? And what are the expectations that we want to set together at the table to sort of say, okay, we accomplished this goal? And I think the level setting of, like, we're not all at the point in the industry where you can get 50 million views online every time. But eventually, with experimentation, you can start to build up a really strong audience that's waiting for that next video.
Yeah.
And the Fine Brothers, which is one of our largest channels now, that with 10 million subscribers, they'll get organically millions. They'll get at least 2 million organic views every time they post, no matter what, because it's such a strong built-in audience.
Yeah.
It took
But
them
how many people you have to filter to get to that one that makes the 10 million, right?
Yeah, I mean, it took them 8 years to build that audience and that voice and that reliability, and now, when they partner with brands, they know they have the expectation of this audience.
But that's exciting on both sides of the equation, because as a YouTube creator, let's say, and I'm at this sort of 300,000 subscriber level, like, it could like, again, those dream scenarios, like, it could be exciting to try to grow together to a certain extent. And you as a brand can get, it's not quite like a spokesman, but it is just this character who's kind of part of your repertoire and can create great stuff for you and potentially expand your reach. And then for the creator, like, that's their opportunity to take a next step up. And that's the sort of dream scenario a little bit, I think, for some of this, like, a little, like, less, not quite so super splashy version of comedy, if you can find that right partnership.
So we are going to open the questions to the floor. So get your questions ready. We have a few more minutes for questions, but I will kind of kick it off with the opportunity, I think, for PR and communications professionals here. We've talked a lot about that experimentation and always on versus campaign approach, and having this lab of testing and learning for a brand that wants to play in this space. But there is also a strong opportunity to connect that to a paid distribution model too. And we've seen in other aspects of social where organic really helps drive where paid can go.
Yeah.
So do you guys want to just talk a little bit about, you mentioned ROI, right? So advertising dollars are shifting into this kind of content. And how are, besides impressions, how are people measuring success here?
Yeah, that's a really fun topic, and I definitely, I'm seeing, like, the metrics of success even change now to, like, we recently got this RFP around, like, guaranteeing 1 million likes. Because they wanted engagement. Now they're, like, doing can they guarantee people liking the video, and can they buy on that?
Right.
So it's, the whole industry is really shifting. I think for us, we sit on top of 50,000 channels that do 4 billion monthly video views, so we can distribute across our network from a video syndication model. But really, what we're interested in is finding the editorial earned placements to drive the organic and authentic earned media. So for us, it's finding the right influencers that can editorially promote something that's funny and something that's cool, and not giving them messaging, but saying, check this out. We're doing this program with brand X. If you think it's awesome, like, how would you want to engage your fans in it, and how would you editorialize? So we created a sort of a native ad spot. Native is kind of a buzzword, but we call it Influencer Plus. It's we take over the 30-second pre-roll spot on YouTube, and we have the influencer create their own commercial and editorialize something that's happening. And it works really great when they're promoting content versus just a product or a messaging point. So if we're doing a content program with a brand, we use influencers to promote that content.
Yeah. And
questions? I know I only have like 2 minutes. I went over a little bit here. Any questions?
One really good question. Ideally encompassing all the questions. Yeah.
Really see. There you go.
You talk about comedy being masterful empathy, and empathy requires humanity.
Yeah, usually.
Brands aren't terribly good at being human. They tend to be quite serious about themselves.
R&D, just to spend a bunch of money and you can develop it.
Right.
Good answer.
It's a really tough question, and by nature too, the audience is going to have a sort of cynical point of view already. So you need to do more than just a general creator needs to. You need to also like crest this hill of sort of negative expectation, perhaps. People are going to expect you to be selling them something and not be human.
But you can pave the way, kind of maybe, again, you cannot come from being a serious so-called brand to a humorous brand just overnight. So you can start paving the way, say like, okay, maybe it's not being funny, comedic, maybe just showing sort of happiness or maybe a positive outcome or being more positive outcome in life. So we've seen, at least in our type of studies we've done, is like maybe it's not laughing out loud, but maybe just giving a nice context that should be enough. Maybe the context of the humor comes from a channel on YouTube or from a TV program, so the brand gets embedded in it, and it can bring something to the table that it doesn't have to be exactly the same or the extreme comedic fun.
And I think
stuff.
the PR,
something in the middle.
Yeah, the PR folks in the room are going to be able to drive that. The ability to do that. One great example that I saw recently was with Nestle, which is a huge global conservative brand. And when the iPhone 6 was launched, there was all this hubbub about the bend and Bendgate, and they posted a tweet of a picture of a Kit Kat, and they said, "We don't bend, we break." And I thought that was beautiful because it was taking a risk, it was being part of the conversation, it was being bold, and it was reactionary to what was happening right this second.
And I think too that it can be about finding opportunities for humor or just fun beyond the sort of expected. So I think Twitter is a great example of people, it used to just be you had a 30-second ad spot and let's try to make ourselves appear as human as possible in this very manufactured chunk of time. And now Twitter is opening it up a little bit. You can kind of get into this, but I think it does expand way beyond that. And especially digitally, there are countless different ways, touch points and interfaces with which people are interacting with you, whether it be on their phone or whether it be somewhere through your site or the response they get from an email newsletter sign up, or there's all these different things. And every little moment to view those as an opportunity to, if you can kind of come with a well-timed joke or something, a wink, at the moment when I'm engaging with the sort of like contact page of your website, but that suggests to me that you start moving down that empathy trail. Does that suggest to me that you, brand, understand the situation I'm in right now, and you're giving me a little bit of a wink and a nudge and of acknowledgement of saying like, well, here we go. And humor can be super powerful right there because now I start to realize, oh, you know what? Someone on the other end designed this experience for me. They use this joke right here to let me know that they understand the situation I'm in. And so that big thing that.
And comedy set up the mood.
I have to use a cane here. An old-fashioned. We have to wrap up. We're going over. I'm sorry. We can continue this conversation. Hashtag MSLWit. Throw your questions on Twitter. Hashtag MSLWit. And we will make sure that this incredible group of panelists answer your questions, and we'll get some fun continued conversation online. So thank you all very much. Sorry, Arun. And
thank you.
Again, thank you to this incredible panel.